Hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in to my webinar over Club Etiquette 101, Proper Etiquette when Attending Private or Country Club Events. Hello, my name is Angela Fisher. And yes, Spontaneous is my middle name. I am the CEO and founder of Spontaneous Events and Production and the second Member Relations Coordinator for the Crescent Club of Memphis, Tennessee. When I'm not working, I spend my days studying international communications along with pursuing my master's in public relations at Full Sail University. My job at the Crescent Club is the reason why I decided to do a webinar over proper club etiquette. First, let's go over the outline. In this webinar, we will go over why attire is important, menswear and women's wear. Given a proper introduction that includes shaking hands, addressing club members, and knowing when to ask questions. We will also be reviewing dining etiquette that goes over seating arrangement, plate setting, and when to order. And finally, we'll review good versus bad manners. So, why is proper club etiquette important, or etiquette in general? Well, attention to etiquette is a sign of professionalism and respect for others, and it can make positive first impressions while building trust among colleagues. Understanding of business etiquette also facilitates cross-cultural communication and trade, in addition to increasing productivity in the workplace. Etiquette implies behaving politely while interacting with others in society. It helps to forge relationship with people. It also shows respect for others and in return earns you love and respect from them. A lapse in etiquette may offend the other person and could result in breach of friendship or may even cost the individual their job. There are many rules of etiquette you have to follow when attending private clubs, and one of them is attire. Usually at a country club, the appropriate attire for men includes business slacks and collared shirts. Hawaiian type shirts may or may not be permitted depending on the club. Examples of acceptable attire for women include business slack, dress capris, skirts, and dresses. Shorts with a minimum of a 5-inch inseam that rises no more than 5 inches above the knee are acceptable. Tops can be tailored, blouses, and high-quality t-shirts and sweaters are permitted at some clubs. Now, at any club, there is a difference when you are presenting casual versus business wear. For more sophisticated events like formal or black tie affairs, or even semi-formal or business casual, different types of attire are required. Usually for executive business casual, jackets and slacks for men are acceptable and ties are optional. Suggested attire for women include blazers or jackets, pants, tailored suits, or dresses. For formal and black tie events, tuxedos for men are acceptable. Cocktail dresses and evening dresses or dressy evening separates for women are okay. When it comes to black tie optional, gentlemen have the option of wearing a tuxedo, though a black suit and tie are acceptable. The same dress code applies to women. It cocktail dresses, evening dresses, or semi-dressy separates are all acceptable when attending these events. Next, we'll be talking about giving a formal introduction. Even when introducing yourself or others, there are certain guidelines that one needs to follow to assure that the proper introductions are made. When introducing yourself, be sure to make proper eye contact with the parties that you are addressing. Depending on a member's status, whether that member is a club senior or a new member, depends on how you address them as well. Before we get into giving the proper formal introductions, I'm going to give you some quick tips on who to address and when you should address them. If you are a new member at a club, you should never approach a club senior or address them in an informal manner. Also, be sure that it is the club senior's position to address you or invite you into a conversation before you interrupt the business meeting. Okay, now let's get to the introduction. When you're making an introduction, never use first or nicknames. Speak clearly, make eye contact, and be sure to have a firm grip. You also want to always use courteous language. For example, I like to introduce, may I introduce, or I would like you to meet are all good options. Good options when making a formal presentation. Use preferred names and title. In more formal situations or when there is an obvious age difference, it is best to use titles and last name. For example, Mrs. Simmons, I'd like you to meet Mr. Jacob. This let Mrs. Simmons invite Mr. Jacob to use her first name or not. Even in informal situations, it is helpful to use first names and last name. For example, Judy, this is Tom Jacobs. Tom, this is Judy Simmons. You can use a nickname only, repeat, only if you know the person prefers it, but in most cases, they are not acceptable. Note that when introducing your spouse or children, it is fine to skip last names, unless they have a different last name from yours. When introducing someone in a small group, it's practical to name the group member first, primarily to get their attention. For example, always say, Sarah, Kathy, Dunn. I'd like to introduce Chris Tyler. Chris Tyler, I'd like you to meet Sarah Rocker, Kathy Henley, and Dunn Quinn. This is the perfect example of giving a correct formal introduction. Next, we will be moving on to dining etiquette. When dining, there are several guidelines you should follow, and usually it regards seating and placement of items on the table, or when you should or should not eat. First, we will be going over napkin placement. As a rule of thumb, as soon as you sit down, turn to your host or hostesses and take a cue from them to begin. Once the host or hostess unfolds his or her napkin, you should remove your napkin from the table or plate and place it on your lap. If dining out, you should remove your napkin immediately. Keep your napkin in your lap until you finish eating, for if you must get up at any time during the meal and plan to return, place the napkin on either side of your plate. After you are finished, place the napkin on the table to the left of your plate. When it comes to knowing when or if you should or shouldn't eat, if you are eating out, you should wait until the members of your group have been served before you pick up your fork. At a private dinner, observe the host or hostess and pick up your fork when he or she does. However, if you are at a buffet, you may start when the others are seated at the table. Food. When it comes to food, for dinners where food is served at the table, the dishes should be passed in a counterclockwise flow. Never reach across the table for anything. Instead, ask for the condiments to be passed from the persons closest to them. Note that salt and pepper should be passed together. Always use Always use serving utensils and not your own to lift food from the serving dish. Next, we will be going over the plate setting. Silverware, one of the most common issues to confuse today's diners is which utensil to use for each course. A typical rule of thumb is to start with the utensils that is the farthest from your plate and work your way towards the center of the plate setting. If you see the host or hostesses doing something different, you may follow his or her lead. As you can see, this is a spread of one of the most formal dining plate setting. A usual plate setting contains basically your basic charger, your salad fork, your dinner fork, your soup spoon, a dessert spoon, and a dessert spoon. It usually also contains a water goblet and one of the following wine, champagne, or sherry glasses you see on the table. A napkin is usually always at every station unless your utensils are rolled. And therefore, in those cases, you will receive a separate napkin from those to place over your lap. Next, we'll be discussing good versus bad manners. In any type of situation when dining out or just in general, there are always good versus bad manners. Good manners in clubs are the same as manners elsewhere, only a little more so. A club is for the pleasure and convenience of many. It is never intended as a stage setting for a star or a clown. There is no place where a person has greater need to restraint and consideration for the reserves of others than in a club. In every club, there is a reading room or a library where conversation is not allowed. Now, other manners that we always note to follow is that to always be respectful of other people's spaces and their agendas. When two people are sitting by themselves and talking, another on no account should join them unless he is an immediate friend of both. To be a mere acquaintance or still less to have been introduced to one of them gives no privilege whatsoever to interrupt the conversation. Now, it is different. One rule of thumb is to speak when spoken to. If someone outside of that conversation addresses you or speaks to you in a polite manner, it is always good manners to answer responsibly. But note, you must wait until you are formally invited into the conversation to intrude. Another rule of thumb is to always drink responsibly. Whether you're just casually dining in a club or in a business meeting, drinking is one of the most common problems. And usually it's because people do not know their limits. Take this as a general rule. If you're someone who usually does not drink or drink occasionally, please, the rule is to take no more than a half glass of wine. And even more so, even at other formal dinners, a glass of wine is the limit and it's acceptable. By no means should you go over your required limits. Another thing in today's society that is a big issue, especially with technology, is cell phone. In business meetings, or once you enter a private club, you should always turn your cell phone to vibrate or off. It should never be left on for extended periods of time, and checking text messages or any social media sites throughout the formal dinner, business meeting, or lunching is not acceptable by any means. That is all I have for you guys today. Do you have any questions for me in general? All right, since there are no questions, I would like to thank everyone for attending this webinar. And please you can check out my Facebook page and other social media sites for more information on tips and club etiquette while dining out, or even business attire for the young professionals. Thank you and have a great evening.